What is up, guys? Welcome to another video. Hope that you guys are all doing good. All hell is breaking loose at DC and I am loving it. Zack Snyder just posted an image of Henry Cavill and had the quote, "Henry Cavill is Superman." So that image now has gone mega viral.
Following the release of James Gunn's Superman, the mainstream media was very keen on presenting the movie as an unprecedented success. And one of the things that I take pride on is that on this channel, I was one of the first to cut through all of that nonsense by reporting that James Gunn's Superman wasn't the box office win that we were being told. Starting with a video I made over 3 months ago declaring James Gunn's Superman a box office flop when it wasn't very trendy to say such things, as opposed to now when plenty of people have joined this conversation. And today, following some recent developments, I want to debunk another type of spin that we've gotten from James Gunn, Warner Brothers, and the mainstream media for a while now regarding Zack Snyder, suggesting that Gunn and Snyder are really good buddies and that Snyder somehow fully supports everything that Gunn is doing. Yes, I know that back in the day in 2004, Snyder and Gunn worked together on a movie, Dawn of the Dead, which James Gunn wrote and Snyder directed, but I think that this idea that they're besties has really been misrepresented, especially since James Gunn became the co-CEO of DC Studios in 2022, because in reality, if you think about it, in spite of this so-called camaraderie that supposedly exists between them, James Gunn's first order of business after he walked into his new office at Warner Brothers was to fire Henry Cavill, who had just been rehired as Superman.
And I really hate that, because the truth is that Henry Cavill was the best Superman that we have ever seen. I don't give a damn what anybody says he is. He was born to play that character. Even Ben Affleck. Like, I wasn't a fan of Ben Affleck, but when I saw Batman vs. Superman, I was convinced that that, my friend, is Batman.
Who had just been rehired as Superman, fire Ben Affleck, who was supposed to appear as Batman in Aquaman 2, but then deleted from the movie, fire Gal Gadot, who was supposed to appear in another Wonder Woman movie. So basically, Gunn wanted to get rid of everything and everybody that was somehow connected to Snyder, aside from his own Peacemaker show and his own wife, who he wanted to keep around so that she could make out with Peacemaker or something. And then there's also a part of me that suspects that James Gunn didn't just get up one day and make all these big moves.
Okay.
It's more likely that while making the Suicide Squad and Season 1 of Peacemaker in 2020 and 2021, Gunn had already started some political maneuvering behind the scenes, and once Zaslav arrived, he used his influence to gain creative control of DC. And taking all of this into consideration, I think that this whole idea of Gunn and Snyder toasting marshmallows together in front of a fireplace singing Kumbaya is just another PR spin which I never bought. People like to use the example of Zack Snyder and James Gunn appearing together on Rick and Morty before Superman's release as an example for their friendship, and also a separate occasion where Gunn and Snyder took a picture hanging out together, which James Gunn then posted online, giving the impression that they were friends and they enjoyed hanging out.
You know, the biggest problem with that picture is this. If James Gunn and Zack Snyder are such good friends, right? Why not let your friend come back for one last movie? The truth is that James Gunn knows how popular Zack Snyder is, okay? And he's afraid that somebody's gonna outshine him. The Penguin won so many awards, but did he tweet about it? Did he talk about it? Of course not. Why? Because that was a project which had nothing to do with James Gunn.
Well, as it turns out, Gunn and Snyder doing voices for Rick and Morty and their picture were both taken on the same day, at the same location, not so much as a friendly hangout, but more of a PR photo op, just in time to likely appease Snyder fans before the release of James Gunn's Superman at the time. And that organic Rick and Morty appearance with Gunn and Snyder that everybody was raving about? Yeah, and I never bought that as some kind of spontaneous idea that the creators of Rick and Morty had. I think that this was more of a situation of Warner Brothers putting something together, because Warner Brothers owns Rick and Morty. And in one fell swoop, they got that photo op with Snyder and Gunn being buddy-buddy. They got them both together on that Rick and Morty episode. Everything seemed really positive. My suspicion is, perhaps after realizing that Superman was not tracking at the box office as they had hoped, Warner Brothers thought this joint appearance would cause some Snyder fans to give James Gunn's movie a chance. And for those wondering, why would Snyder ever even agree to this if he didn't really like Gunn? The answer to that is quite simple. First of all, by doing this, Snyder gave gave off the impression that he was a good sport and not a sore loser. In addition, keep in mind that all of Zack Snyder's movies still appear on Warner's HBO Max for streaming, something that he still likely makes money on, so not cooperating with Warner Brothers when it came to their Rick and Morty idea would have been a bad political move for Snyder. Instead, Snyder came off here as a decent guy that isn't afraid to poke fun at himself, and nobody could later blame him for people not showing up for Gunn's movie because of anything that he did.
True.
And by the way, this fake camaraderie now...
But I think it was very smart and very political of Zack Snyder to do this, because I'm under the impression if a person is better than me, then let him beat me at what we do.
Narrative didn't stop there. Gunn later somehow suggested that he consulted with Snyder about David Cornsweet's Superman suit, which is kind of a joke if you compare Cavill's suit with David's suit.
I talked to Zack Snyder, who was like, I tried a billion different versions with the trunks, and I couldn't get there. Theoretically, I like the idea of trunks because it's, Superman I grew up with.
But in reality, though, I think Snyder had other plans. Knowing very well who James was, his offbeat style, and even Snyder seeing promotional material for Gunn's Superman before its release, Snyder probably figured that it wouldn't go so well with moviegoers, as Gunn had assumed, and he was just waiting patiently to make his own move at the most strategic possible time. He let Gunn's movie come out, he let the backlash to it happen, and he waited. But now, in a week where we have all the worst news that you could think of for James Gunn and his DCU, like Superman doing poorly on streaming, Superman losing money, Peacemaker doing badly on streaming, Snyder finally emerged out of the shadows to deliver something of a knockout punch to Gunn. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in a recent Instagram post, Snyder shared a picture of Henry Cavill as a defiant-looking Superman with the caption, "Henry Cavill is Superman." Something that...
Okay, we have to have the conversation about this. Who do you guys think is the best Superman? Who's your favorite Superman? Because I have to say, number one, that's Henry Cavill. Number two, I have to say Dean Cain. He was a very, very good Superman. And then number three for me is, of course, Christopher Reeve. Those are my three. But if we're being honest, Henry Cavill is the best. To this day, it's burned in my memory. Because I'm like, you can't tell me that the fighting sequences weren't breathtaking. Even today, when I put Superman on sometimes, I'm still like, I'm so amped up when the Zod fight happens. And that picture right now is somewhere around 412,000 people which have liked it. So I think it's probably going to hit 1 million.
Something that Wonder Woman actress Gal Gadot was quick to like.
Yeah.
The same one that was fired by Gunn, if you recall. Now, I'm sure some people are going to write this off as a coincidence in timing, but I don't believe that at all. There's a reason why at least some Gunn shows are having meltdowns right now over this, because they know that there's meaning behind this.
And this is to the James Gunn fans. If you guys are doing so good and you guys are such a big fan base, why not just support the movie? Why do you guys need us Snyder fans to support your garbage as well? You guys are so big, right? So you should not even care about us. We're just a fringe little group. We're just like these losers somewhere in our basements, right? To me, it makes no sense, because I'm like, if you guys are the bigger fan base, then just show it. Support your dude. The guy's starving right now. He needs you guys to actually go and support him.
Behind this, and they also know that Gunn and his DCU is losing momentum, which is why Snyder actually posted this. And if I had to give my own analysis, I think that Snyder sees this as an opportunity, a kind that he hasn't seen in a while, because with James Gunn's failure and Warner Brothers potentially being sold at some point, there's actually a chance somebody will eventually bring Snyder back to make some DCEU-related movie. Now, as I've said in previous videos, this is still far from happening, but if nothing else, I think that this shows that the tide is turning against James Gunn and his DCU, and Snyder knows it. But regardless, I do feel like Snyder is feeling that there's winds of change, and maybe it even shows that he's still here and he's still interested in doing something. At least that's my opinion. As for James Gunn himself, it really depends on who buys Warner Brothers, if at all, but I will say that a guy that continues to lose money and deliver failures probably is not going to get billions and billions of dollars more to waste. I know that happened with Kathleen Kennedy and Alex Kurtzman, but my instinct tells me that perhaps with James Gunn, especially if either Zaslav or maybe some other shrewd businessman is involved, it'll be much more difficult for him to pull off.
Okay, so those are my thoughts when it comes to this video. Do not forget to, of course, like, comment, and share. Do you guys think that Zack Snyder is a hack, or do you think that James Gunn is a hack? Personally, I think that Henry Cavill is the greatest Superman that we've ever seen, and Man of Steel was just the definitive Superman movie. It just is.